One of the lost boys of Sudan is now ensuring that children are protected and able to prosper. Meet a survivor of the 1987 Sudanese exodus.
My name is Thon Moses Cho. I was born in South Sudan. As a result of civil war, I left home at early age in 1987 when mostly our villages were invaded by the enemy. So I fled home. On my way, walked to Ethiopia. Along the way, I was joined by other miners, other boys and girls. And along the way, we lost so many boys and girls. By the almost late 1987, we reached Ethiopia. And I was resettled there for at least 4 months, 4 years. And then after that, the civil war broke out in Ethiopia. So I have to leave the country. I was forced to come back to my own country in 1991. I stayed for a couple of months, and then the Arabs who was actually fighting us started bombing almost every day. So we have to leave the country, heading way to Kenya. And that's how I left. So along the way, the majority of us actually died along the way. Some died due to a result of exhaustion. Some were eaten by wild animals. Some were killed by the enemy. And a few of us made it. About 15,000 made it to Kenya. I spent most of my time in a refugee camp. Once in Ethiopia, briefly in South Sudan, and then most of the time in Kenya, where almost 9 years in Kenya. So by that time, there was no hope for me going back to my own home of origin. So I qualify under the refugee status. So I applied for a settlement. There was a special program that was slated for the lost boys. By that time, we were called unaccompanied minors. So that was a very competitive program because many of us were facing the same story. Many of us had no relative, no parent. So we were very much living in groups. So when the opportunity came, the number was very limited. So many of us had to go through the interview process because it was only 4,000 that was invited to come to the United States. So, and I was very, very lucky to be one of the 4,000 that made it to the US. Coming to America, there was no specific home for me. So what I considered at the time, my home is where there is opportunity. So when I came to Michigan, that's where my brothers are. So I stayed there, I went to school, did my bachelor's degree, did my master's. And then because I was part of the foster care system, there was a program called Congressional Foster Care. It's a very competitive program in the US, so mostly when you're in care or you just got out of care, you apply. So I applied for the program, I was accepted. It was about 15 of us. We came to Washington, D.C., and what they do, they place you in congressional offices to kind of educate Congress about the foster care system, the child welfare system, and how young people sometimes are affected in the system. So they brought some of us as advocates. They placed me in my senator office, in Senator Carl Levin and also David Stabenow. So I did about 3 months, we did, advocacy for the foster care overall, and, our ultimate goal was to really look closely at the child welfare and how young people grow up in the system. Well, I did not really earn it. I think one thing that I admire in the district, it's actually been 6 years in 2 weeks for me working in the child welfare system. It's just I think it's a collective effort. I cannot take credit for it. It was a collective effort from social workers, from foster parents, from the DC resident, from the management, from the mayor. So really coming together and trying to reform the child welfare system to become a model, in the country. I've been home a couple of times, but the last time I went back home, I actually went back to my own village for the first time in 20 years. And the reason I went back home was not because I had anybody back home. There was not anybody for me. But my state, where I come from, they were killing each other almost every day because we had 5 different tribes in Jonglei State, where I come from. And because, during the Civil War, the war had ingrained some sort of hatred. Because during the Civil War, some tribes were using other tribes. Some tribes were being used by our former enemy for us to instigate, for us to fight ourselves. What we said at that time when we came to this country, we prayed, we said, Americans brought us for a reason. They brought us here so that we become successful, for us to be able to go back and help our people. One of my friends started the organization. He's in New York. It's called John Dow. His other name is Theo. So he formed a group called South Sudan Institute. And what he did, there were three components of South Sudan Institute. One was agriculture, because we very much depend on agriculture. The second was education. We want to educate our people so that they can also cherish our values and culture, but at the same time trying to catch up with the world. And then the third part was peace and reconciliation. We went there and walked on the street just like them in the forest. I slept under the tree, we went back, slept the same way we left. And we told them that the reason that we are coming to do all of this is because we don't want you to keep killing yourself. All of us are refugees on earth because whether you're Christian or not, no one is permanent on earth. So we can be temporary here and some of us can leave, So when you look at the word refugee, it depends in which context, So for me, one of my ultimate goals is to be a good citizen, to be able to give back.
What a truly inspirational piece. In the studio today is DCTV co-producer Beatrice L. McBride. Thanks for being with us here today.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
Awesome, awesome. So what was your impression of Thorn Troll after meeting him?
Well, considering all that he'd gone through, this piece is truly a celebration of the tenacity of the human spirit.
Definitely.
And he's also a very dedicated, selfless servant leader. He's totally committed to empowering the immigrant community through education. And as an example of his commitment, he was hosted by the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services in 2000 to come to the U.S. And he now serves on the board of directors.
Wow. That's amazing. It seems like he had, quite the journey, quite an amazing journey. So to be able to talk a little bit about what he's been through and kind of see what he's doing in the community, it's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. So after, speaking with him and talking with him and learning his story, what did you take away from the conversation with him?
I think the main piece that we took away from that is no matter what you've gone through, the only thing standing between us and truly being a positive impact on our community is our level of commitment.
Right.
I think it was truly incredible to hear him speak with such grace, the horrors that he experienced as a child.
Right.
And to me, it was transformative. To me, all of my excuses fell away. There's no reason why we can't do more with what we have.
Right, because it seems like he's definitely overcome some severe boundaries and things that would probably, take people down. But he seems to have like a fighting spirit to keep moving forward, and that's amazing.
Yes, he certainly does. He's very humble, but he's very powerful at the same time.
Well, that was a great story, and I really appreciate you coming in the studio today to talk about Thorn.
Thank you.
Awesome. A humble man who sees that his work is not in vain continues on his journey to help children all over the world be safe. For more information about the Lost Boys of Sudan, visit johndewfoundation.org or lirs.org.